I'm Dennis Anderson along with Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
The United States steel industry has been hurt by a glut of foreign-made steel as Iron Range mines await a turnaround.
Well, Duluth's Lifehouse has been serving homeless and street youth for 25 years with plans for growth in the future.
And WITC in Superior is touting Wisconsin Manufacturing Month with a focus on opportunities for students.
These stories and a lot more coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. And Julie, fall is definitely in the air tonight.
Yeah, this was one of the first days where you could really feel that cold chill.
Yeah, there's a bit of a bite there.
A little bit of a bite and the leaves are starting to fall.
For sure. All right, let's get our mind off the weather and to our first subject.
All right. Thank you, Denny. It's been a long year and a half for the domestic steel industry in the United States. Iron Range mines and miners have felt the brunt of a downturn that continues to drag on. And while some mines have resumed production on the range, the most recent steel industry statistics show there is still a long road ahead. Joining us with his take on the industry is Tony Barrett, a professor of economics at the College of St. Scholastica. And welcome back.
Always good to be here.
It's always good to have you here. Now, high tariffs have cut back on the import of foreign steel, but there still seems to be a glut of it on the market.
No seems to be about it. Yeah. I mean, we're back in a more normal situation. Last time I was on about a year ago, steel was flooding into the economy with illegal dumping. Finally, the bureaucratic process has happened. They've imposed the tariffs that have stopped the dumping. But the fundamentals of the world steel industry is still way over capacity. Demand may someday eventually catch up. The Chinese keep telling us they're going to cut their capacity. I'll believe it when I see it. And until that happens, it won't ever be great again.
Tony, other than foreign steel, are there other problems that the steel industry is facing?
Not domestically. I mean, our U.S. steel industry has been under so much stress for 30, 35 years. The companies that have survived that are the best in the world. I mean, they're efficient. Labor management relationships have come, light years.
They've stayed up with technology.
So in that sense, I don't see what more we could do domestically.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the outlook? Now that these high tariffs have been placed, how long do you think it's going to take before that glut kind of works its way through and production levels start coming up?
I was anticipating that question, and my answer is, I don't know. That's not much help.
You got to give me more than that.
So much depends on what China does. Their official policy is they're going to close down their excess capacity. They have almost half the world's steel production is in China. And they don't need it anymore. They built that up because they were investing so much domestically. Well, they're not anymore. They're trying to reorder their economy. They don't need those steel mills anymore. Now, in the United States, one or two would go bankrupt, a couple would merge, and you'd have three efficient companies. But in China, with communism, they don't want to lay off the workers. The state-run banks continue to lend these companies money to keep them open. And they say they're going to close them. It's just not happening to the degree it needs to happen to bring supply and demand worldwide.
Tony, Magnetation was hoping for a wonderful future on the Iron Range. Didn't happen. Is there still hope for Magnetation?
I was surprised that no one came to their rescue. I think their technology is certainly in their fourth mine,
in Grand Rapids, mine number 4, yeah.
Mine number 4, their technology is getting better. And I thought there was a future there. It's just that the whole industry is under such a depressing situation right now. That's a little strong, but there's not really the need for their output yet. But I was surprised no one came to their rescue, and I would not be shocked if something happens.
Now, Cliffs Natural Resources planning to build another taconite plant in Forbes. What does that investment tell you about just kind of the state of mind in the industry?
There will always be a need for our taconite as long as we have a domestic steel industry, and I cannot imagine ever not having it. So what they're doing is farsighted. I don't think this isn't the best. And we saw SR Steel. They could not have timed their project worse. This seems to me to be a sign that things are getting better, that Cliffs at least thinks are getting better and will continue to get better because you're building for the future.
The CEO of Cliffs says he's expecting a turnaround, a visible turnaround, better production in 2017. Are you reading the same tea leaves?
I think he's a little optimistic. But, and again, it goes back to China. And I have a lot of respect for him. I mean, what Cliffs has done and the way they survived the downturn is really rather remarkable. And he speaks his mind, which is always nice too. But I also think I remember him saying 2016 was going to see the turnaround. I would not rule out 2017. This gets to kind of off track, but I think there's a feasible case could be made that the U.S. economy may see a recession next year, a little post-election spasm, something like that. And if that happens, you won't see steel prices bounce back up. If I'm wrong about the recession, and I'm totally willing to be wrong about that, then possible second half of the year things could get even better.
Now you mentioned that there would always be a need for taconite in domestic steel. Do you see that even with the rise of the electric arc furnaces?
Yeah.
And are there things that you think that a company like Cliffs really needs to be thinking about as they build a new taconite plant to prepare for the future and the needs of the industry?
Without a doubt, the arc furnaces, the higher valued taconite products, the direct reduction, things like that, that would make things a little safer up on the range, a little more resistant to downturns. You'll still need the taconite that exists now going into the mills that make new steel. You'll need that. We have not done a particularly good job of the direct reduction, the higher value-added taconite products. It's been talked about, there's been a couple steps, but it's never been quite what I thought it would be.
And
if you asked me 20 years ago, I would have thought we'd be further along.
You're an economist. Does the Iron Range need other industry than steel?
I don't think it can. I mean, that's all, everyone always says to me, should they diversify? Well, yeah, sure.
But what?
Yeah, and those are just phenomenal jobs. I mean, for small town America to have jobs like that, how do you diversify away from those? Now, it'd be good to have other industries there, soften the blows of the downturns, but you can't turn your back on that industry.
All right, Tony Barrett, economic professor, College of St. Scholastica. Thank you very kindly, Tony.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
The pristine waters of the St. Louis River, beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Toxins have found their way into these waters, contaminating the fish.
I feel that the St. Louis River is like a bloodstream, and the watershed is the capillaries. The Lake Superior is the heart. And the bioaccumulative and persistent toxins that are behind the dam and in the landfills are like cancer sores. And we have to remove those cancer sores.
To protect the public, environmentalist groups want signs posted along the river, warning fishermen of the dangers in the fish. These groups already have the support of local governments. St. Louis and Carleton County commissioners and Duluth City councilors have passed resolutions asking the DNR to fund this program and put up signs. Environmentalists hope this pressure will force the DNR to take action. On the St. Louis River, Laura Cowan, KDLH News.
Since 1991, homelessness and at-risk youth have found a beacon of hope at Duluth's Lifehouse. Now, over those 25 years, Lifehouse has grown into a multi-program organization that serves some 650 youth annually. The Lifehouse Drop-In Center on West 1st Street is the hub of the organization and its services, and those services are poised to grow. So, joining us with more is Maude Dornfeld, Executive Director of Lifehouse, and Margie Nelson is a Development Associate at Lifehouse. Thanks to both of you for being here tonight. And maybe you can tell us, Maude, a little bit what Lifehouse has been doing to celebrate 25 years.
Well, gosh, to kind of respect the 25 years that we've been in business, and we've learned a lot of things. So one of the things that we're doing this year is a series of lectures addressed to the community. They're open and free to the public. And we're trying to dismantle some of the myths that exist around homeless and street youth. So varying topics from, what's with all the tattoos to our next topic, which is much more serious, dirty money, how and why kids get sucked into the drug and sex trades.
Are you seeing an increase in the number of youth who are coming to your facilities and tapping into your programs?
Yes, and we have seen somewhat of an increase in the absolute number of youth that come, but what we're really seeing is that the number of times they're coming to visit us is up sharply, almost 50% over the last couple of years. And the kids that we're seeing are having much more serious issues that they're trying to overcome. We've got serious substance abuse issues, the sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, mental illness, a whole host of things that they're really struggling with.
What happens to create homelessness in our youth in this wonderful city?
Well, there's a variety of things. Some of them are coming out of the foster care system. They find themselves at 18, not really sure where to go from there. We're a place that they can get help getting the services that they need and figuring out what's next with their lives.
And what can Lifehouse do for them, Margie?
We have a variety of programs. Our drop-in center is where we see them first. We offer employment and education training. We have a transitional employment program where we offer paid job training so that they can get some experiences and learn how to utilize their skills in order to be more productive.
And Soul House too. Talk about that, because you alluded to some of those challenges with dirty money. And I think that people still have a hard time realizing that there is sex trafficking going on in our community. And you see it every day.
We do.
Talk about that as an issue and how you're working with some of the kids who are facing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lifehouse has been aware of the sexual exploitation of teens and young adults, since we opened, and has always dreamed of having a home for teens who've been sexually exploited. And that dream became a reality last year when we opened Soul House. It's a beautiful 5-bedroom home, very home-like, not institutional at all. And young people up to the age of 21 can stay there for up to 2 years until they're fully healed and recovered. And in addition to having a safe place to stay, we also offer free mental health services through our drop-in center and free substance abuse counseling. So they can get the complete array of services that they need.
Do you try to encourage the youth to stay in school or to return to school?
Yes. As Margie mentioned, we do have an education and employment program. So kids that really had a bad experience in school or maybe shouldn't be back into a mainstream school setting can work on their school at Lifehouse. If they want to complete a GED, they can get assistance with that. And we do a lot of support to get kids into college, and right now I think we have almost 10 kids who are in college working on an associate's degree, and we've got a couple that are working on their 4-year degree. One of them wants to become a social worker and hopefully come back to work at Lifehouse.
Margie, talk a little bit about Lifehouse and how you've seen it impact people. Maybe some personal stories. I know you can't talk about specific people, but just maybe share some insights into what you see people transforming their lives through Lifehouse.
Sure, and just being able to access those services and having someone to turn to and talk to. A lot of our staff build relationships with the youth, and they've never had meaningful relationships with adults before, and they really create a rapport and find someone that they can look up to and grow from that, and someone to model after. And we have some really strong relationships with the staff, and that's one thing that's really struck for me.
Maude, tell us about maybe some of the myths of homeless youth.
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is that kids are on the streets because they just don't like the rules at home, and they want to, you know, rebel and be on their own. And what we see much more often, in addition to kids coming out of the foster care system, is kids whose home lives are actually, they perceive them to be less safe than being out on the streets. So it's not so much that they're running away from home, it's that they're almost fleeing their homes. Or, you know, there's just a lot of other dysfunction going on. So the perception is that the kids are making bad choices, and really what we see is that they're trying to make the best choices that they can within the really difficult circumstances that they find themselves in. So that's a really big myth.
Do you see homeless teens as kind of an overlooked population?
Yeah, you know, it's really not as visible of an issue in our community as it is in some other places, like maybe Portland, Oregon, or Los Angeles. So, you know, if it's out of sight, it's kind of out of mind, and people are often shocked to hear how many homeless teens and young adults there are in the Duluth area. Right now, we know that there are 150 youth on the waiting list for supportive housing in the community. And there's really, at the moment, between all the different agencies in town, fewer than 50 beds available. And Lifehouse currently operates about 30 beds. But our goal is for next year to increase our housing inventory up to 50 units, so we can begin to make a dent in some of that.
I understand on October 18th, Dirty Money is going to be played. Where can people go if they want to participate, or how do they find out about these upcoming lectures?
Sure, and check out our website. That's the best place for where we have all of the upcoming events listed.
Sure.
But the lecture will take place in the Lifehouse Drop-In Center. It'll be before it's open.
Wonderful.
But it's a great opportunity to come and see our facility and see where the youth are coming.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Maude, Margie, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. The state of Wisconsin is home to about 9,500 manufacturing companies, which employ more than 450,000 workers. Projections show that those numbers will continue to grow in the next decade, putting an emphasis on the need for trained workers. And to that end, the state of Wisconsin has declared October Manufacturing Month, and WITC in Superior is helping put the spotlight on local manufacturers. Here to tell us more is Charlie Glazman, WITC's Superior's Dean of Continuing Education and Workforce Training. And thanks for being here, Charlie.
Thanks for having me.
Why is it so important to put a focus on manufacturing for a month?
Well, think about it. How many times have people in the community driven past so many of these manufacturers and haven't really had an idea what it is they're producing? We are having a special event on October 12th on our campus, Manufacturers Revealed, and we've invited about a dozen local manufacturers, companies like Jamar, companies like Charter NEX Films, to come in and demonstrate the types of products that they're producing. We're going to put them right alongside of our technical and trades programs, so that people coming through, when we're opening this up to the community, people coming through can see what skills and knowledge are needed in order to fill the jobs at these particular local manufacturers.
Charlie, are we seeing a shift from traditional four-year colleges back into the trades again at technical schools?
A lot of that is going on right now. Anecdotally, I can tell you that we're finding a number of people coming into our programs have four-year degrees already.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of these people are telling us they go to a four-year college for an education, they come to WITC for a career.
Do you think that there's a negative perception out there about manufacturing, and maybe families don't push their kids in that direction, or teachers don't push their students in that direction?
That's another purpose of Manufacturers Revealed.
Yeah.
Is to, when I was growing up, a lot of the ideas were that these types of jobs were dirty, dumb, or dangerous. It's not like that at all. You go into a machine tool manufacturer's plant, and they are as clean and bright as any food manufacturers. In fact, the skills needed now in machine tool are more closely related to computers than they are to using hand tools.
I've heard from more than one source that this country is facing a shortage of welders. You have a welding program at WITC.
That's correct. In fact, it was so popular, in order to respond to the need, we developed a second section of it. So originally we were producing 16 welders every 3 semesters. We are now doing 32 students who are graduating every 3 semesters. Our first class starts in the morning, our second class starts in the afternoon, continues on into the evening.
And so are more women taking jobs in the trades today than, say, a decade ago?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, as we mentioned, our welding instructor in the second section is a woman, and is very successful.
Does WITC work specifically with any of the manufacturers in town to try to maybe develop specialized skills that they need, or to make sure that they're involved in the training so that your graduates actually fit those jobs that are being created?
Well, I appreciate you asking that, Julie. Actually, by state statute, we have to have advisory committees made up of manufacturers or people in the field to help us identify trends, identify curriculum, to make sure that what we're putting out there is what they want. We usually have these advisory committees meetings meet with each trade program or technology program twice a year, usually in the spring and in the fall. And again, the idea is to look at what are the trends in the industry, how are we going to address those things. In fact, we need their approval for us to purchase the equipment that we want to use in our schools.
Go ahead, Julie.
What about reaching back in the other direction too, maybe toward that K through 12 educational continuum, so that there's a maybe a track of kids who go toward those kinds of careers?
We've been trying to address those needs. Due to budget cuts, many of the K-12 systems have had to drop the shop classes and those types of things. We are trying to fill that gap. And the way we're trying to do that is we're starting to develop what we call academies to encourage students who are done maybe at 3:30 in the afternoon come over to our college and take classes. We offer them right now to Superior High School students, for instance, in machine tool, in welding, in certified nursing assistant, in intro to barber cosmetology. And the idea is that to try to make it as seamless as possible between the high schools and our technical colleges.
Charlie, how many different programs does WITC offer?
Throughout the district, we offer 57 different programs.
Really?
Everything from marine technology to welding.
And from the manufacturers specifically, what are you hearing in terms of the job outlook and the types of jobs that they'd like to see more workers going to?
Right now, I am told that there are some 65,000 manufacturing jobs in the state of Wisconsin that are not being filled. Wow. These are advanced manufacturing jobs. These are jobs requiring more than, in some people's mind, being a welder. Well, I welded my father's garage, so therefore I'm a welder. No, it's much more than that, and they do require at least, a technical diploma in order to get a number of these jobs.
So there are lots of jobs out there for folks with the right skills is the message.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Charlie, for coming in.
you.
Good luck with it.
Thanks, Charlie.
Appreciate it. Time now for the business headlines from our friends at Business North. A federal bankruptcy judge approved a settlement Thursday that will wind down operations at Magnetation's Plant 4 near Grand Rapids and its pellet plant in Reynolds, Indiana. Magnetation President Matt Leighton said the company would turn its attention to an orderly discontinuation of production. The company will now focus on preserving the value of the plants for a potential buyer. Under the settlement agreement, AK Steel will pay $32 million to end its pellet contract with Magnetation. Proceeds will be distributed to some of the company's creditors.
A Minnesota-based company has completed the acquisition of a heavy equipment factory in Prentice, Wisconsin, formerly owned by Caterpillar. CAT began laying off workers last week with plans to discontinue production as part of a global restructuring. Spexis is a contract engineering and manufacturing company headquartered in Montevideo, Minnesota. The company reportedly bought the plant as part of its strategy to seek rurally located manufacturing operations. Spexis intends to start producing forestry products machines in Prentice, but hopes to expand to mining, agriculture, railroad, and energy companies.
After missing Wall Street expectations for several quarters and seeing its share price drop, Ascena Retail Group has announced a comprehensive transformation plan. Ascena is the owner of Duluth-based Maurice's and spent 6 months formulating a plan to cut costs by more than $300 million by the corporation's 2019 fiscal year. Same-store sales have been relatively flat for the clothing company. Maurice's had been the exception until the most recent quarter. The company has restructured its business into 4 operating segments. George Goldfarb was appointed president and CEO of the value fashion segment, which includes Maurice's. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
Call now if you have a comment on our program. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to Almanac North at WDSE.org. And don't forget to visit the WDSE website for updates on your favorite shows, news about station events, and a listing of the programs available on our 4 digital channels. And Julie, best get out and enjoy the fall colors this weekend before they're gone.
Yeah, I think one more week and it turns into what my husband calls deer woods.
Oh, there you go.
You can see them.
Leaves are on the ground. All right, for Julie and the crew at Almanac North, I'm Dennis Anderson. Have a great weekend. Good night, everybody, and be kind.